Rain battered the parking lot like an angry sea, turning puddles into mirrors that shattered under each gust of wind. Mason hunched deeper into his worn work jacket, tugging the hood tight against the downpour as he locked up the shop. The last car had been fixed, the last invoice signed, and all he wanted was to get home to Lily. His little girl would be waiting with her blanket wrapped around her shoulders, crayons spread across the table, and a mug of cocoa cooling beside her. The thought of her always gave him that last push to make it through the night. The storm, though, was getting worse. It howled through the cracked sign above the auto shop, flinging loose sheets of rain sideways. Mason jogged toward his old pickup, boots sloshing through the water pooling across the lot. Just as he opened the door and started to climb in, a jagged bolt of lightning lit up the sky, splitting it for a heartbeat into white fire. In that instant of brightness, he saw something, movement at the far end of the lot near the ditch. He froze. A car door hung open. A figure stumbled out, nearly losing balance against the wind. Mason frowned. Nobody should have been out there, the storm was fierce enough to knock down power lines. What the hell, he muttered, squinting through the rain. It wasn't one of his workers, they'd all gone home hours ago. Maybe some drunk from the bar down the road. He told himself it wasn't his business. But then he saw the way the person fell to their knees beside the car, unmoving for a few seconds too long. Damn it, he hissed and grabbed his flashlight. The wind tried to tear it out of his grip as he trudged forward, mud sucking at his boots. The beam jumped with each step, slicing through sheets of rain until it landed on the car, sleek, black, and far too expensive to belong in this area. A luxury sedan, the kind his boss, Evelyn Langford, drove. He reached the door just as the figure slumped sideways. The woman's dark hair clung to her face, her business suit drenched and torn at the hem. Mason knelt down, steadying her shoulder. "Hey, you okay? Can you hear me?" She blinked blearily, her pupils dilated. "I can't," her voice trembled. She tried to stand, but her ankle twisted, and she pitched forward. Mason caught her before she hit the ground. "Whoa, easy now," his voice trailed off as the flashlight's beam swept across her face. Recognition struck like the thunder overhead. Ms. Langford. Her head lifted slightly, and even through the rain, he saw her confusion. "You're Mason. From the garage." "That's right." He shrugged off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders, ignoring the cold. "You shouldn't be out here." "What happened?" She gave a weak, humorless laugh. "Guess I shouldn't have tried to drive. I only had a drink or two." Her words slurred together. Mason sighed. He looked over her shoulder at the car. One wheel was buried deep in the muddy ditch. "You're not going anywhere tonight. Come on." She made a sound of protest as he helped her up, but the wind drowned it out. He put an arm around her waist and half carried her toward the truck. The storm lashed them mercilessly. Water streamed off his hair and down his face, and the mud threatened to swallow their shoes. Evelyn leaned against him, shivering violently, her perfume long replaced by the sharp scent of rain and earth. By the time they reached the truck, she could barely stand. Mason opened the door and eased her inside, then climbed in after her. The heater groaned to life, pushing out a breath of warmth. He turned to look at her. Her lipstick was smudged, eyes red-rimmed, cheeks streaked with mascara. The proud, polished woman he saw striding through the office during inspections was gone. She looked lost, small, even. "Drink this," he said, handing her the half-full bottle of water from his console. "You hit your head." She shook her head, staring at her trembling hands. "No, just stupid choices." He started the truck, wipers struggling to fight the storm. "Happens to everyone. Let's get you somewhere dry." She stared at him then, as if trying to read his intentions. "Why'd you stop? You could have just driven away." "Because you looked like you needed help." Her lips trembled in a faint, bitter smile. "People don't usually help me. They just expect me to fix everything for them." Mason didn't know how to respond to that. The road ahead was slick, the rain so heavy it blurred the streetlights into pale ghosts. He focused on driving, stealing occasional glances at her. She'd pulled his jacket tight, still shivering, her head resting against the window. When they reached his small house on the edge of town, Mason parked and turned to her. "We're here. You can crash inside until the storm passes. No hotels open this late, and you shouldn't be out again." Evelyn blinked, as if the words took time to reach her. I can't impose." "Trust me," he said softly, "it's fine." He helped her out again, guiding her through the puddles up the porch steps. When the front door swung open, Lily stood there in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy." "Who's that?" "Just someone who needed help, sweetheart," Mason said gently. "Can you grab a blanket from the couch?" Lily nodded and scampered off. Evelyn lingered in the doorway, glancing around the small but warm living room, the soft fire crackling, the cozy clutter of toys and books. A picture on the mantel caught her eye, Mason with a smiling woman and a baby girl. "Your wife?" she asked quietly. He followed her gaze, his face softening. "Yeah, she'd passed a few years back." "I'm sorry." "Thanks." He shrugged slightly. "Still got the best part of her right here." He smiled toward Lily, who came running back with a blanket too big for her to carry properly. Evelyn knelt to accept it. "Thank you, Lily," she said, her voice quieter now, her composure beginning to crumble. Lily grinned, unbothered by the stranger's fancy clothes or tired eyes. "You can sit by the fire. Daddy makes the best cocoa." Mason chuckled. "You're giving away my secrets, kiddo." As Evelyn sat down by the fire, her wet hair steaming in the heat, Mason draped the blanket around her shoulders. She looked into the flames for a long time before speaking again. "I don't think anyone's ever done something like this for me," she whispered. "Like what?" Stopped. Stayed. He didn't say anything, just leaned against the doorway and watched the rain pounding against the window. The storm outside seemed far away now, tamed by the warmth of the room. After a while, her breathing slowed. She fell asleep sitting upright, the blanket slipping slightly from her shoulder. Mason walked over, adjusted it, and took a moment to look at her, this woman who terrified her staff, who carried herself like she didn't need anyone, now resting like a child who'd finally run out of strength. He sighed, half smiling. "Even bosses need saving sometimes," he murmured, more to himself than to her. The fire crackled softly. Outside, the thunder rolled away into the distance, leaving only the sound of rain easing against the roof. In that small house, for the first time in a long while, there was peace, fragile, fleeting, but real. Morning light spilled through the thin curtains, stretching across the small kitchen and catching on the steam rising from Mason's frying pan. The storm had passed, leaving behind the smell of wet earth and the soft chirping of birds testing the air after a long, angry night. Mason flipped the eggs, the familiar rhythm of breakfast grounding him back in routine. Lily sat at the table, her legs swinging, pencil scratching against paper. "Daddy," she said without looking up, "the lady's gone." He glanced toward the couch. The blanket was folded neatly, the space empty except for a small note placed carefully on the coffee table. He wiped his hands on a towel and walked over. The handwriting was graceful, neat. "Thank you for last night. You didn't have to help me, but you did. I owe you more than you know, E.L." He smiled faintly and tucked the note into his pocket. Typical of someone like Evelyn Langford, composed even in apology, polite in her retreat. Maybe she'd pretend it never happened. Maybe she'd go back to being the boss everyone feared, the woman in heels and silk who didn't have time for small people with grease under their nails. He couldn't blame her. Their worlds didn't mix. "Will she come back?" Lily asked, coloring a sun in the corner of her paper. "I doubt it," Mason said gently. "People like her don't usually hang around long." Lily frowned. But she looked sad. Mason sighed. "Yeah, kiddo. Sometimes even people who look like they have everything are the saddest." The rest of the morning passed quietly. The storm's aftermath left the roads muddy, but the day gleamed clean and new. Mason fixed a leak in the roof, packed Lily's lunch, and thought no more about Evelyn Langford. Until someone knocked on the door around noon. It was soft at first, polite, hesitant. Then again, firmer. Mason wiped his hands on a rag and opened it, expecting a neighbor or maybe a delivery. Instead, there she was. Evelyn stood on his porch, sunlight glinting off her dark hair. She was put together again, sharp black blazer, cream blouse, pressed trousers. But something in her had changed. Her eyes weren't cold, they were searching. In her hands was a paper bag that smelled faintly of pastries. "Morning," she said, voice a little unsure. "I brought breakfast. Thought it might be time I returned the favor." For a moment, Mason just stared at her, caught between surprise and the faint absurdity of seeing his boss holding a bag of muffins on his front step. Then he stepped aside. "Come in." Lily's delighted squeal broke the tension. "You came back." She ran forward before Mason could stop her, hugging Evelyn around the waist. Evelyn laughed softly, her composure faltering. I suppose I did. And you must be Lily. The girl beamed. I made you a drawing. She ran to the table, picked up a crayon picture, and held it up proudly. It showed 3 stick figures under an umbrella, a storm around them, hearts floating above. That's you, Daddy, and me. For a long second, Evelyn didn't say anything. Her lips trembled just a little before she knelt to Lily's level. It's beautiful, she whispered. May I keep it? Lily nodded eagerly, and Evelyn folded the paper carefully, as though it were made of glass. Mason watched, arms crossed but soft-eyed. They sat together at the small kitchen table. Evelyn unpacked the bag, croissants, still warm, and a paper cup holder with 2 coffees. The smell filled the room, blending with the faint scent of motor oil and the sweetness of Lily's crayons. I didn't think you'd come back, Mason said finally, breaking a croissant in half. Evelyn met his eyes. I wasn't planning to. I almost turned around twice on the way here. Then what changed your mind? She hesitated. You did. He blinked. Me. You could have walked away last night, she said, her voice soft. Everyone else in my life would have. But you didn't. You saw me at my worst, and you didn't make me feel small. I wasn't trying to make you feel anything, he said quietly. Just trying to do the right thing. That's exactly why I came back. The room fell into a gentle silence, broken only by Lily's humming as she drew. Evelyn took a slow sip of coffee, her gaze lingering on the child. There was something wistful in it, an ache Mason couldn't name. Finally, she said, there's something I need to tell you. Mason frowned slightly. You don't owe me an explanation, Ms. Langford. Evelyn, she corrected softly. And I do. She set her cup down, fingers trembling slightly. Last night wasn't just a rough night. That party, it was supposed to be my victory celebration. The board had closed a merger I fought hard for. But what I didn't tell anyone is that they'd already decided to push me out. They called it a strategic shift. She laughed, the sound brittle. They said I wasn't ruthless enough to run the company. Mason looked at her, not with pity but understanding. So you went to prove you could handle it. And failed spectacularly. He shrugged. You're human. We all fall apart sometimes. Difference is, most of us don't do it in heels. That made her laugh, a real one this time, the kind that broke through the layers of tension she carried. She shook her head, smiling. You're not what I expected, Mason. Neither are you, he said. You know, when you first took over, everyone thought you were made of stone. I thought I had to be. She sighed. Power teaches you that kindness is weakness. But last night, you showed me something different. He raised an eyebrow. What's that? That compassion doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong. He didn't know what to say to that. Lily's laughter floated in from the window, and for a while, they just sat in the quiet hum of an ordinary afternoon. Then Evelyn reached into her bag again and pulled out a thick envelope. I wanted to show you something, she said, sliding it across the table. Mason opened it. Inside was a document, a proposal with his name on it. Langford and Cole Automotive, Partnership Plan. He looked up sharply. What's this? A new beginning, she said simply. I'm walking away from the company. I have some savings, some connections. You have skill, honesty, and the kind of reputation money can't buy. I want to help you expand your shop, under your name, your rules. He stared at her, speechless. You're serious? Completely. She hesitated, her voice softening. Last night you saved my life, Mason. This is my way of saving yours. You deserve better than scraping by for people who don't see your worth. He leaned back, stunned. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it, she said. Then, after a pause, and maybe, let me come by again. For the company. Or the coffee. Her eyes held his, uncertain but hopeful. The morning sunlight caught the edges of her hair, the same light that used to feel harsh now wrapping her in warmth. Lily burst in, holding up another drawing, this one of 3 people standing in front of a car with a big sign reading, Daddy's Garage. Evelyn smiled. Looks like your artist has already decided for you. Mason chuckled, glancing between his daughter and his unexpected guest. Yeah, he said softly. Maybe she has. Outside, the world gleamed after the storm, puddles sparkling like glass, the air clean, the future unknown but wide open. Evelyn folded her hands, the faintest trace of relief in her posture. Mason reached for his coffee, feeling a strange peace settle in his chest. "Guess we both needed saving," he said finally. She looked at him, her expression tender and bright all at once. "Maybe we did." And for the first time since the thunder faded, the silence between them didn't feel empty. It felt like a beginning.